5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
And welcome in, everybody, to another episode of the High-Low Sports Podcast. It is DJ, joined as always by my co-host Kelcey. And Kelcey, the last month has been maddening. I think it's living up to the name March Madness across various sports as well. We got an interesting set of topics to talk about today. A lot of movement on the gridiron and on the basketball court to break out the Cinderella shoe, because there's some teams going dancing that we didn't expect to see this far.
Yeah, I mean, look, hey, Cinderella might have finally found her slippers. Not only did we get a first-round upset in the belly up March Madness tournament, but this whole tournament has been filled with actual Cinderella stories. And I'm not just talking about the men's March Madness, because, by the way, let's not forget, this is the first year women got to advertise using the March Madness name as well. And there's been tons of upsets over there as well. This has been absolutely insane. My pick for the women's bracket, Iowa, got bounced out early on by Creighton, which, by the way, bounced out by a former Iowa athlete hitting the game-winning shot for Creighton. Fantastic storyline there. But look at the men's bracket. You got St. Peter's over there. You have, Miami. They're facing off against an 11 seed as well. It's like there's all sorts of things going on in this tournament, and we're not even to some of the crazier things that have happened so far.
Well, you gave a heck of an introduction there, so that's going to lead us right into our first segment, also known as the tip-off, brought to you by Dr. Squash. Smell like a man, feel like a champion. All these wonderful soap scents you could want, all for a really reasonable price. Click link in our bio and get started there as well, too. And you know what? We're just going to go right into it. March Madness has been absolutely wild. You got us alluded to it, but I think that tagline for those watching the live stream summarizes it perfectly. The year of the underdog. We've seen a whole lot of upsets already, the biggest one being St. Peter's. Not only upsetting second seed Kentucky in the first round, but following it up by taking out Murray State, the 7th seed, in the next round to advance to the round of 16 as well, too. So talk about an incredible run for them, and that's only one upset. That's just like that's the pinnacle of the upsets. There's been plenty more to talk about as well, too. I mean, looking at it as well, too, on the other side of the bracket, we saw the 2 and 3 seeds, Auburn and Wisconsin, both go down as well, too. We saw 3 seed Tennessee go down. What was that, sir?
Crazy to see that Auburn fell to Miami. I knew once they faced off against Miami, though, that was going to be a tough one, I got to say. But that was, like, still crazy to see.
Absolutely. And then on top of that, too, North Carolina bouncing Baylor as well, too, after an incredible comeback by the Bears after getting scorched early, but able to make it a close one as well, too. So guess I'll go ahead and ask you, looking at all of these upsets as well, too, there's a whole lot to go through. Let's go and talk about them. Which one really stands out to you right now? Which one are you like, wow, you got to be kidding me?
I mean, is it too easy to pick St. Peter's? Like, I guess that's my motif at this point in time on the show.
Right, we'll correct that. Besides St. Peter's, who's number 2?
Oh, man, that's tough, honestly. Like, because you look at it and there was so many that I kind of was like, all right, well, I can see this one happening. But at the same time, you're like, did I really expect that to happen? Like, Michigan doesn't surprise me in the least. Let me be completely fair about that one. Mm-hmm. Michigan playing Nova, I expected that. But St. Peter, didn't expect. Obviously, we're not counting them. Providence, I expected. But the Iowa State, Miami, honestly, I'm going to take a tie between the two of them, because they're both, like, how do you do 11 and a 10 seed matching up at the bottom of a bracket, beating a 2 and 3 seed to get there? That's not easy to do. Like, it's not like they beat somebody who beat a 3 seed. They didn't beat a 15 who beat a 2 seed to get there. They beat the 2 and the 3 to get there, along with their tougher opponent in the first round as well. So, like, bravo to both of them. Maybe more so Iowa State personally than Miami, just because they were not great in the regular season play.
What's kind of weird, you mentioned those two looking at it as well, too. So Iowa State in the first round squeaked by LSU 59-54 in a close game. And then Miami squeaked by USC 68-66. They actually beat their tougher ranked, the 2 and the 3 seeds, by more points. Iowa State won 54-49. And then Miami 79-61 over Auburn. So they actually had a better success the better the competition got as well, too. So that was an interesting note. And one of those teams is going to be advancing on into the Elite 8 round as well, too, where they'll take on either Kansas or Providence. So that would be a really interesting matchup there as well, too. One that kind of stuck out to me is I was honestly surprised to see North Carolina beat Baylor as well. Not because Baylor was that good. It's because last year I had the exact same thing happening to Baylor, getting upset in that round, and they went on to win the whole thing and destroyed my bracket. So I was surprised to see North Carolina kind of rally and able to step up to that moment, especially after giving up that 25-point lead as well, too, and letting Baylor with an absolutely heroic comeback before sealing it in overtime. So now the resolve and the way they did is what really surprised me about that one.
Yeah, you know, that one is actually really interesting, because I remember we were hanging out that day, just like chilling at the house, and turned on the game. It's like a 20-point game. Like you're like, oh, okay, yeah, Baylor's done. They fought their way back, and it was like, I mean, they nickeled and dimed their way back in this one, and then UNC, man, I thought for sure they were going to get bounced in the previous round. I had Baylor being upset in this round, but by the opposite team, by UNC's opponent last round. But UNC continues to just kind of prove like, hey, we don't need Roy Williams. We are still UNC at the end of the day. We are that team. Like, you still need to fear us. We are the Tar Heels. As MJ said about this Tar Heels team at one point in time, the roof is the ceiling. So that's it's you never know what you're going to get with them night in and night out, but it is, I don't know, it's entertaining to watch them, and yeah, it's look what they did to Baylor. Wow, defending national champions. Congratulations, you just beat them.
What's even cool though is we get a clash of two OGs, if you will, in this round too, with North Carolina now taking on UCLA as well too, and for a chance to go to the Elite Eight. Times are finally starting to come back. These are teams that have been so good for so much of their history, struggled a little bit here and there in recent years, finally with a little bit of a comeback and maybe a chance to make a run. We talked a lot about St. Peter's, and I guess it's time to kind of revert back to them a little bit as well too. Obviously, that big upset over Kentucky shook the world. Then taking on Murray State and winning that game pretty comfortably as well too. Now they take on a team that you kind of had on upset watch in our preview, taking on Purdue as well too. Team that I weirdly had going far, and a team that you were like that you also said, you know what? Don't be surprised if they get upset because they have some really weird stats against them as well too. So that's gonna be a really interesting match to see if St. Peter's goes on this George Mason type run, or if Purdue can kind of bury some of their defensive demons, if you will.
And that's just it. I mean, Purdue, man, that's been the worry. Like that's the stat, right? They're top 20 in offensive efficiency, bottom 120 in defensive efficiency. So it's like, okay, well, how are you going to stop? And honestly, St. Peter's offense is built to beat big teams. I mean, you watch this offense. This is a perfect motion offense. It's perfect pick and rolls. We were watching it, and they ran a high pick and roll against a zone matchup, which doesn't normally happen. You don't run a high pick and roll versus a zone matchup and get a near corner 3-point open shot. That doesn't happen, and we watched St. Peter's do it 3-4 times. And it was consistently just like it's just coaching. Coaching is on another level with St. Peter's, and interesting enough, the head coach for St. Peter's, he is a pretty experienced March Madness opponent. He was the a point guard back in the day in the 2000s run. I forget which school, but he led his team on a March Madness run in 2000. And by the way, he's going to get himself a nice paycheck at the end of the year, whether it's for a bigger team or if he stays at St. Peter's in Jersey City. I don't know, but yeah, it'll be this team is fun to watch, man.
Either way, there will be some zeros chiming in for him as well, too. The other upset in the first round, I want to point out that is surprising, but at the same time, it's not surprising at all whatsoever. Iowa falling to Richmond 67-63. Iowa's kind of a weird team where it feels like they've almost turned into regular season heroes the last few years. Like they are so good in the regular season, but comes March Madness, they always seem to be primed for an upset. Their offense seems to just really struggle. It almost looks like Iowa's football offense when they get to March Madness as well, too. It's like if they get a little cold from the outside, they seem to fall apart. So that was an interesting one as well, too, which isn't surprising, but at the same time, it's like, this was really, now you're falling apart again. Like you have a 7-year senior in Jordan Bohannon, and you're still struggling to get out of the first 2 rounds.
Yeah. No, it's Jordan Bohannon, by the way, ultimate disappointment for Iowa fans, I feel like, after he came in with such promising, ever since he intentionally missed a free throw to not break the record, which is, again, a very heartwarming story. But ever since he missed that free throw, he has literally just never been consistent after that. You don't know what to get from him.
It's a roller coaster ride, to say the least. And one upset that didn't happen, but got awfully close and had people sweating. Gonzaga versus Memphis. A close game down to the wire. Gonzaga pulled off late, 82-78. That had a lot of brackets sweating, if you will, as well, too. A lot of people were looking at that game and starting to feel nervous. So go and toss you, Kelcey, as we head into the round of 16. Gonzaga's taking on Arkansas. What do you see when you look at that game? Who do you got in that one?
I have Gonzaga, and I just think there's this Arkansas I don't trust. They look in the SEC, they beat Auburn. They couldn't beat anybody else until it came down to the tournament, in which case they got on a roll. But I don't concede them being consistent enough to beat Chet Holmgren and Drew Timme down low. I watched Drew Timme and Chet Holmgren completely struggle so far in this tournament in comparison to what they did in the regular season. But I still don't think Arkansas has enough at the end of the day to be able to compete. So that's going to be the big difference. But yeah, I do have Gonzaga going over Arkansas on this one.
I will say, too, when I look at it, I think almost losing to Memphis is going to be a wake-up call for everyone as well, too. And I think they're going to take it out on Arkansas. So I can see this being a mini rout, if you will, as well, too.
I will
Next
say
one.
Memphis, though. Look, hey, everybody says a lot about Memphis being a 9 seed. I will be honest and say that Memphis was one of my guys. Like, I was watching them in case they possibly could sneak one in. They're a sneaky good team,
I think
and
if
they
they could have
have
been
been
in
all season.
any other of the sections against any of those other number one
Yeah.
seeds, they could have made some noise. I think Gonzaga that's a tough match for you.
Yeah. Oh, they would have done the same thing that UNC did to Baylor. Probably, actually, honestly, they might have walked the dog against Baylor. If I'm being completely honest, because Memphis, when they're on a roll, that team just keeps rolling. It is actually really scary when they're on a roll how good they are offensively. But yeah, they could have walked the dog with Baylor. But I mean, yeah, you said any other number one team they face except for Gonzaga, they probably pull it out. So
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with you on that one. I'm looking at Texas Tech and Duke now, and I think Texas Tech is game, but I think Duke is once again going to find a way to pull it out. I mean, they walked through Cal State Fullerton pretty comfortably, and they had a pretty close but a comfortable win over Michigan State as well, too. So I think Texas Tech, Duke, I think Duke's going to find a way to get out of this one. Maybe not comfortably, but they'll win it securely. What are your thoughts on that one?
yeah, I mean, I had it set up for Coach K to get to the sweet or Elite Eight again in this one, and it's I hate to say it, but I don't think he has a better path than he does now. Looking at this one, and I think Duke again, much like Gonzaga, holds on to the favorite type of situation and is able to pull this one out and get themselves to the Elite Eight.
Absolutely. Next, moving down the brackets, we got the Blue Bloods, UNC versus UCLA. And you know what? I think I'm going to give UNC the upset. I think I'm going to say they pull it off as well, too. I think when they can get cooking like they did as well, too, I think they could be a problem. UCLA is really good, but give me UNC to continue this surprising run and the 8C getting to the next round as well, too, to the Elite Eight.
Yeah, truthfully, I see no reason why. I had UCLA getting bounced earlier on anyways. And I'll say this. I had Baylor losing to an upset in the last round anyways. So I'm going to continue that theme that Baylor did not exist in this round and will be upset here. So that's basically what I'm doing. The team that beat Baylor is going to continue to advance is in what I see in my eyes.
That works as well, too. Next one we got, this is the one for you, St. Peter's taking on Purdue. Are you riding with St. Peter's? Do you think they pull this one off, or do you think they think the Cinderella story, the heel?
Well, as DJ decided he wanted to take a break real fast, I'll go ahead and answer this question for him with a beautiful quote from the other guys. I'm a Peacock captain. You got to let me fly. And that is 100% what I'm going with. These Peacocks right now, I mean, they are absolutely ready to spread their wings and fly, if you will, in this one. And I think they're going to be able to pull this one off. DJ, though, obviously I have myself going with St. Peter's. I want to see the Peacocks fly like the other guys. What do you think in this one?
Yeah, give me Purdue. I like St. Peter's. I think they have a good chance, but give me Purdue on this one. I think they found a little bit of a rhythm offensively. I think they're going to get going, and I think they're going to continue the advance. They were kind of I think they were going to get to the Final Four. I think they were going to come out of this bracket, and I think they're going to keep that one going as well too. I think it's close though. I think it's going to be close early, and it's going to be like, oh, is St. Peter's going to do it? But I think Purdue's going to get hot down the stretch and separate just a little bit. But it's a very interesting matchup as well too. Jumping onto the other side now. That matchup you mentioned earlier, Iowa State taking on Miami as well, too. Double-digit teams trying to get to the Elite Eight. How do you see that one playing out? I think I'm personally leaning towards ISU because I think they play a little bit better defense. I think they could just get in Miami's face just enough so they don't get cooking.
This is going to sound weird, but I think this might be the best game of this Sweet 16. I really do. I think both of these teams shouldn't be here. If you look at this one, obviously March Madness is where Cinderella stories are born and blah, 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 all the other crazy things you want to come up with for it. But in reality, neither one of these teams are supposed to be here. Both teams had a pretty relatively poor regular season, if I'm being fair. Their conference tournaments weren't great for either one of them. So this is going to be one of those situations where you see two teams just like, I don't have anything to lose. Let's just go out there and ball out. You might see 20 missed 3-point shots from both sides, but this will still be the most exciting up and down, back and forth game, I think, of the tournament. You're going Iowa State. You know what? Give me Miami in this one. They upset Auburn. I think they can pull this one out too.
Absolutely. Next, we have Kansas taking on Providence. Providence, a darn good team. They've ran through Richmond comfortably, but I think Kansas squeaking by Creighton a little bit. I think Kansas is kind of similar to Gonzaga. I think having a close game, it's going to put them on a second alert going into this one to avoid this upset. So I think having that close game with Creighton is going to give Kansas that extra boost, and I think they're going to get by Providence.
And that's your opinion. I still have Providence continuing their role to the lead.
Okay.
There's Providence Friars, man. Again, I think they might have been slided with a 4 seed in this. I do. I think they're one of those teams that they're a 4 seed, on paper, but they're just as good as some of these 2 seeds, and I'd even say 2 of the 1 seeds that have now lost. I mean, I think they're a really good team that they got slighted by being a mid-major. I mean, that's at the end of the day what I think happened. And I don't know. Give me Providence. I had a good feeling about them when I picked my bracket, so I'm gonna continue that good feeling.
All right, and we're gonna go start rounding this out in the South bracket now. So we got Michigan taking on Villanova. You've been really high on Michigan. Do you think they get to the Elite Eight, or do you think it stops here against Villanova?
Oh, absolutely. Give me Michigan. Say what you will about Juwan Howard and his aftermath, but give me Michigan. This team is playing for their coach, and if you're a coach, getting your team to play for you is the toughest thing you can do. But once you do it, these teams will literally run through brick walls for you. So 100% give me this Michigan team and Juwan Howard.
Villanova is a better team, but you smacked the nail on the head with that one. I think they're playing a little more galvanized right now. I think they feel slighted being that 11 seed when they've been better than that all season as well, too, until the end. So give me Michigan as well, too. I agree with you on that one, but not because they're necessarily the better team, because it is March and the madness will continue. And the last one, we got Arizona taking on Houston. Houston last year is one of your dark horse teams as well, too. Arizona, a number 1 seed. I'm going to stick with Arizona on this one. I think it's going to be close. I wanted to roll with Houston, but I think I'm going to stick with Arizona. What are your thoughts on that one?
I'm going to get burned by Houston again. And this time by picking against Houston. I thought Houston last year was going to be a darling to get to the championship game, and they burned me. Well, they burned me. This is the best way I can put it. But Arizona has been they're going to be the team that gets there. That if it was either going to be Arizona or Auburn, and since Auburn's not there, in that Final Four matchup, so then give me Arizona to get there, and it wouldn't surprise me to see Arizona versus Providence in that next round.
Yeah, absolutely. It should definitely be a fun round of basketball games coming this one. I can't wait for all of our brackets we just made to somehow get busted as well, too. Everything we just said, even with the opposite, somehow we'll both find a way to lose completely as well, too. All right.
I still have a chance, though. My championship winner is still there, and 3 of my 4 Final Four teams are still there. So we have a chance.
I say mine's not too bad. I mean, I missed a few early, but I'm still hanging in there for the same reasons. Like, I still have a chance down the stretch. Just right now, it's not looking too good. But the ones I need to survive. So we'll definitely see how this one plays off in our main brackets as well, too. But that was going to do it for the tip-off, which is going to take us into Kelcey's second favorite part of every show, the main event. The main event, of course, brought to you by Colorcast, one of the premier audio listening sports apps you'll find on the market. Go ahead and download it right now. A lot of fun things coming there as well, too. So you'll definitely want to keep an eye on that moving forward as well. And you know what, Kelcey? The madness, we talked about the madness in basketball. I think the NFL might have won up to it. March Madness is now an NFL than basketball. I think the way it's been going right now. Lots of trades, lots of movement. And the biggest one of them all, arguably, is Deshaun Watson getting traded to the Cleveland Browns for a pile of picks. Not even any players. An interesting note on that one. They didn't have to give up a single player. Just had to give up the farm, I guess. That's the farm, but you didn't have to give up the animals that are on the farm, I guess. I don't even know how to describe it at this point. But Deshaun is heading to Cleveland to become the quarterback of the Browns, joining one of your favorite former Cowboys, Amari Cooper. What are your thoughts on this one as we move forward as well, too? What are your thoughts on this?
This one is a very complex topic to talk about, because if you have Deshaun, the football player, top 10 quarterback, fantastic player. The problem is you can't talk about Deshaun, the football player, without talking about Deshaun, the aftermath, the outside of the field thing. And 22 pending cases, no longer in criminal court, but in
civil court.
Thank you. And so it's tough. It's a very nuanced subject. The Browns did get better. That's no doubt in my mind. There's still moves that need to be made, but I mean, obviously they did get better, but this is a very, it's so hard to talk about this topic and not kind of chagrin at the same time. You signed Deshaun, but did you sign your soul away too at the same time? What's the, I don't know. It's a weird topic to talk about in a lot of ways, but did they get better on the field? Absolutely. Are Browns fans going to be happy? Brown fans are never happy. You know what? I'm going to treat this like this is the movie Shrek. It's like an onion. There are layers to it. I'm going to peel a couple of these, but I'm not going too deep because I don't need that stank in my nose as well too. On the one hand, you mentioned everything about the field as well too. Did they sell their soul? Possible, because the 22 things, that's not something that's not done yet. Just because he's not getting charged criminally, it's not over yet. There's still stuff sitting out there as well too. The part that kind of sticks out to me is there's a chance he's going to get suspended still, depending on how these things play out. Ben Roethlisberger had 2 civil cases that got settled out of court and still missed, I think it was 6 games or something like that as well too. Yep. We've seen
Calvin Ridley's out for a year for gambling. We've seen Kareem Hunt get suspended for 8 games for his incident, if you will. So I'd be surprised if he doesn't get suspended. They reworked a contract for him, so basically he's only making $1 million this year. So he has $230 million guaranteed, and if he gets suspended this year, it doesn't matter. Like, he's going to get fined almost nothing compared to what he's going to be making. That's the part that's on top of everything else. It's a little bit, there's a thick, stinky layer of the onion right there, if you will, as well. So here's the one thing I look at is Roger Goodell knows this. For all the flack he gets, and a lot of it rightfully deserved, honestly, sometimes he's kind of a goober. He's a smart guy. You know, he's looking at that. He's like, oh, really, Browns? He's going to sit back and wait, probably let them play, might even just let them play through this year, let the civil course kind of play out. Let's hypothetically just say that they get settled outside of court. Just we're hypothetically, obviously, as well, to just kind of go after how previous transgressions go. As soon as that happens, I could see Roger Goodell be like, all right, now that that's done, Deshaun, you're missing 10 games next year. And then taking about where that will actually hit right in the pocketbook as well, too. So there's a lot of layers where it's uncomfortable. Are they better on the field? More than likely. I mean, like, I don't see why they wouldn't be. The weird thing with Deshaun is you mentioned he's a top 10 caliber quarterback. He's only 2 wins above 500 for his career, which is kind of interesting considering his last season that Texans team was kind of a mess, obviously, so that's not really being held against him. They won 4 games with him. They won 4 games last year at Davis Mills. Like, how big of a difference maker was he? Like, he's a playmaker, but is he a game changer? That's where I'm wondering as well, too. And he had plenty of talent there before. I mean, Andrew Luck was out for like 3 of those years in his career as well, too. So he was the best quarterback in that division. So I'm curious to see how it works. There's obviously work to be done on the field, but the layers off the field is absolutely messy. Like, we'll see how that works, though. But I don't know, honestly. You mentioned it's kind of hard to talk about as well. We'll see how it plays out, and if he even does play this year or if he plays next year, how the suspension works, the contract thing. There's a weird stank to it as well, too. And obviously, not getting criminally charged, not going to get too far into that as well, too. Not going to dig into the weeds. Everyone has their day in court, but it's got a weird feeling to it. That's how I'm going to leave that part of it at that. It's got a weird feeling to it, and I'm tired of digging through this stinky onion.
Yeah, absolutely. No, and here's a question for you. All right, so you mentioned actually his win percentage. He's actually 2 games under 500 on his win percentage.
Is it actually under 500?
No, sorry, over 500.
Oh, okay. I was like, wait, I was like, holy cow, I was really off. But okay, so it's like 32 and 30 or something like that, isn't it?
Yeah, it is very close. And that's the thing, is like, wow, it's extremely close to what you would not expect from a guy who you can consider a top 10 quarterback when he's on the field and playing. Now you had Baker 1 game below 500, 29 and 30, with a very nuanced understanding of this Kevin Stefanski offense. Do you think even if Deshaun plays somehow, that his offense can somehow excel, even though Stefanski is known to hamstring players who make plays, that just naturally make plays?
I'm curious about that as well, too, because I look at the quarterbacks he's had his best work with, Kirk Cousins, and those 8 to 10 games of Baker Mayfield as well, too. They don't have the improvisational skills like a Deshaun Watson does. That Kirk Cousins a little more of an on-schedule type of quarterback as well, too. He'll take what's there. Baker, not so much. He's very erratic. He's really Carson Wentz-esque with a little bit less mobility and similar arm strength, but not quite the same arm strength, I guess, as far as the ability to rocket it. He could probably throw it as deep, but not sling it through tight windows as well. If that makes sense. And then on top of that, Deshaun's probably not going to keep you on schedule quite as much, but as soon as a play is not there with that first read, he can make something happen. His ability to maneuver around the pocket if something breaks down is second to none. I don't think a blitzing defensive back can tackle him besides Kenny Moore. I don't think he seems to break one every single time. It doesn't make sense. So, like in those situations, I think it's going to be great. I think there'll be a few times he's going to miss a few layups, but he's going to make so many threes as well, too, that they were missing. And then the underrated fact is Amari Cooper is going to be sensational for them on third down because they have 2 really good tight ends. You have all the good running backs. Honestly, if Deshaun could just taper back a little bit of his running around, holding it like a loaf of bread and trying to make too many plays, I think they're going to be absolutely fantastic as well, too. And Amari Cooper, you can't not double team him. Like, if you don't, he'll cook. He'll cook. They still have some work to do to get better, as you mentioned, but on the field, I'm really, really curious to see how Stefanski is going to tweak this offense. I think we're going to see a lot of those bootlegs we saw with Kirk Cousins, but with a more dynamic feel to him. And I think a lot of things that we didn't see last year because Baker was injured / he's kind of limited as a quarterback as well, too. So I think I'm curious to see what Stefanski is going to be able to do to open things up. And they did sign Jacoby Brissett as a backup, a weirdly mobile, strong-armed guy as well, too, who will make a lot of mistakes but can keep the offense on schedule. So if he does have to play, it's a very interesting look that we have looking forward.
I feel like that's an underrated move, by the way. An underrated locker room move, bringing in Jacoby Brissett. Because a guy who's known as a strong locker room presence, literally always been known that way. Let's not forget his story about him when he was at NC State, driving down to the game to support his teammates while he wasn't even playing.
Driving to every single away game while he had to sit out as a transfer. That's absolutely incredible. Like,
so I mean, that could be a part of this whole thing that is underrated. If Deshaun doesn't play for a whole season for some reason, and Jacoby Brissett takes the reins, as you said, he is good at keeping them on schedule, and the Browns are a team when they're successful, they are on schedule. And I mean, that's a perfect fit right there. But now we do have to look at their other moves that they need to be looking at. What do you think the next move for the Browns are?
All right, we're going to go down. You don't have any draft picks, so it's going to have to be free agency or later round picks. You got to get a second receiver in there as well, too. Just somebody to play opposite Amari Cooper with Peoples-Jones, Schwartz. Jarvis Landry would be the perfect guy to bring back if they decide to. We'll see how that goes as well, too. I think you need to find an offensive lineman, like a guy to replace J.C. Treader, just plug in. Honestly, they probably have a guy on their roster as well, too. They probably have guys they like in there. They'll be okay. You got two all-pro type guards in Bitonio and Teller. You'll be fine. Yeah. Defensively, just a little bit of bolstering, honestly. Just a little. If you could bring back Jadeveon Clowney, that's perfect. Just bolster it at any level, honestly, because your secondary is good when it's healthy. Myles Garrett's Myles freaking Garrett. Jeremiah Wusu-Kormo is absolutely incredible. Look for him to be potentially take that next step and be a Pro Bowl caliber player next year. Maybe another pass rusher and maybe just a little bit more help with stopping the run because you're in that division now as well, too. So just little things like that. Honestly, bring back some of the guys that you have as free agents and maybe just a small piece here or there, but they're in a really, really good spot. We'll have to wait and see. They also, I don't know, they have a good amount of money to work with this year because, well, we already talked about that. So we'll see what they have in mind.
Yeah, no, I agree wholeheartedly. I love that. I love the idea of bringing Jarvis back, bringing back Jadeveon Clowney. Two spots you definitely need to fill. I also look at maybe corner. I know they have fantastic corner in Denzel Ward, but health-wise, do you have a third corner that can slide into that slot, especially that nickel corner? Can you get there? Because obviously they're starting two corners. Fine. I mean, you're good. But you need a nickel corner there to help out because you don't have one anymore. Everybody that was playing that role last year is either gone through free agency or gone through a trade. That's been it. And so that's a worry. I also worry that Mac Wilson trade for Winovich. I don't know how well that's going to play off. Winovich is a much more tackle heavy player as far as like behind, like in front of the line of scrimmage. So basically, once the player's already gained positive yards, Winovich will make a tackle there. Mac Wilson's more of a player that makes a tackle on the backfield. So it's two different type of linebackers. So that intrigues me. But in a weird way, like I don't really like it.
I'm really curious if Winovich is a Belichick type of player that was really good with Belichick and is going to struggle here, or if he was just really, really good. If he was pretty good, and then he's going to be even better now in a different type of role. So we'll have to wait and see on that one. I'm really curious as well about that one too. But Browns are definitely something to keep an eye on moving forward. But they're not the only team out here making moves now either, and moves with guys that are a little bit questionable as well too. The fastest guy in the league, arguably, is on the move, and he's going to the South Beach as Tyreek Hill is going to the Dolphins for not one, not two, not three, not four, but 5 draft picks for the receiver, and he is signing a new deal, making the highest paid receiver of all time, surpassing Devontae Adams, roughly, a week after he just became the highest paid receiver of all time, too?
This is insane. And again, you get another Drew Rosenhaus player making money when he sees somebody else taking over the top paid spot. That's not a Drew Rosenhaus athlete. I don't think Devontae's a Drew Rosenhaus athlete, if I'm not mistaken. But yeah, it's like, well, go figure. Drew Rosenhaus, as much crap as he gets his players paid. This is not a move I had on my radar at all.
Not even a little bit.
We got this message at like 11 o'clock this morning, and we sent a thing to our Twitter group chat that we have, and that was it. Like we all were just like, no way, this is true. Not even an hour later, it's literally, hey, Tyreek's going to the Dolphins. I'm sorry, you said what? No. Like, that's a joke, right? This didn't make sense to me. But then I thought about it from the Chiefs' perspective. You just signed Juju. You just get in. You have Josh Gordon. You signed Corey Coleman as well. You're probably going to get a receiver in the draft now. I mean, you could probably go sign any one of these top 6 receivers and be A-okay coming into the draft. And for the Dolphins, wow. Jalen Waddle, Tyreek Hill. I don't know if there's a faster top 2 receivers in the league.
And Devontae Parker's that thorough, and he runs a low 4.4 on top of it as well too. So
can you move him to tight end? Like, can he play like a tight end stretch role? Like, obviously you have Gesicki. I don't know. You can't really replace Gesicki. Like, the Dolphins' offense got real scary real fast.
Absolutely. And bringing in Teron Armstead at left tackle too. So they're all in on Tua. It's like, Tua, if you got it, we got you an offensive coach in McDaniel. We got you the two burners of burners in the league right now as well too. And Jalen Waddle, as amazingly fast as he is too, he's not really used as a deep threat. He caught so many underneath routes just to use his speed. And then Tyreek is the epitome of a deep threat. Tua threw a really good fade route in college up the sideline to guys like Jalen Waddle, Jerry Jeudy, Ruggs, and squad. Hopefully he's still got it. Hopefully he's not like squinting like, is Ruggs out there somewhere? You know I'm not getting the ball all the way down there now, sir. Hopefully he's able to still let it rip and let it fly. And if I'm the Chiefs, I get it. You already are paying Patrick Mahomes. You're paying Chris Jones. You have all that money already invested. You can't make Tyreek the highest paid receiver as well, but still kind of surprising. I feel like it takes a little bit of a damper out of the Chiefs as well, too. I feel like obviously Patrick Mahomes is the cog. Travis Kelcey is the horse, but Tyreek Hill he added that little extra flavor that made the Chiefs. And I think they're going to definitely miss that this next year.
Yeah, there was just something knowing that Tyreek Hill is on the outside there if he even lined up outside, sometimes he'd line up in the slot or even in the backfield. And the next thing you know, he gets the ball and he rattles off 60 yards and he walks into the end zone and is patented like deuces literally on it. Oh, well, now he just sticks his glove up like this and the deuces are already painted on the glove because, now he gets a fine if he puts the deuces up. But yeah, it's like that change of I feel like we just watched the Chiefs go from NFL street team to Madden team that fast. Like, I feel like they're no longer that team that just goes and plays backyard football anymore. Like with Tyreek Hill, with Travis Kelcey, you'd get Travis Kelcey around the sticks. Tyreek Hill would just go make a play, like get open and make a play somehow, like in the freakish athlete way that he could. Last year with Byron Pringle, he would do the same things, but in a smaller effect. Now he's gone as well. Like, it's very unique for the Chiefs going forward. I don't want to say they're going to go more to a normal offense, but I feel like they're going to become more boring and become more normal now. It is a very unique look now with Tyreek leaving.
I really like the Juju signing as a guy that can help you move the chains, work the middle of the field with Kelcey and those type of things as well too. But I don't like it as much now when he's your number one and Tyreek Hill is gone. Like, it doesn't, unless Mecole Hardman's going to slide into that role and be able to take the top off more consistently. But it's a very interesting move for them moving forward. And the Dolphins, I think it puts them in a position to compete with like the Bills in their division and the Patriots. Like, it puts them in a spot where they could be like, okay, guys, we're still here. You got to fear us a little bit as well too, because Patriots defense got a little bit worse as well too, losing J.C. Jackson. So I'm really curious to see how this works. And honestly, if it can't work, if Tua can't make this work, like if he can't lead them to the playoffs, I think he's done in Miami. I think this is your put up or shut up type year. It's all in or nothing. If you don't get to the playoffs or make some serious noise, I think he's going to be gone, and they're going to be searching for a quarterback. And weird enough, they still do have their first round pick next year. So if they do struggle, they might have a chance there as well too. So we'll see how that plays out.
Yeah, only getting rid of the 29 and 50. Those are the top two picks that they're getting rid of this year, along with a fourth rounder. Like, that's not a bad. Like, if you can get rid of something, you might as well get rid of a high first round and a low and a mid range second round. Like, you don't feel as bad about that.
Absolutely.
Yeah, Mike McDaniel has his work cut out for him. But it brings us to this question, DJ. Where do they fall now in the AFC? The whole wonderful landscape that is the AFC with all the changes now. Where are your power rankings for the AFC leading you?
All right, so we won't go too deep into this as well because there's a lot of weeds here. There's 16 teams. I'm going to point out the Jets aren't going to be very high, but look out for them. I like what they're doing. If Zach Wilson could take that next step, they could be very interesting because they have some good draft picks as well. Just want to mention them because they're not going to be very high on this list. I'm just going to go through like my top 5.5 right now. We'll start at the 5 spot right now, and I'm taking a page from the Kelcey Rankings playbook. It is a tie for me. I have 2 teams here right now, and the reason they're tied, I'm giving the tiebreaker to the Chiefs at number 5 over the Colts by a slight margin, simply because both teams have some needs, and I think they're going to address them moving forward, but they're not there yet. The Colts, they need another receiver. They need some speed. They need something to go with Matt Ryan and Jonathan Taylor, Michael Pittman. And honestly, they could probably use another offensive lineman and another playmaker on defense. So they have some holes there. The Chiefs, I give them the edge because Travis Kelcey, Patrick Mahomes. That's all that needs to be said. The continuity, even without Tyreek Hill, they're no longer 1 or 2 in the AFC. They're still in the 5 range. They're still, I'm not going to say a shoo-in for the playoffs, but they'll probably get in there as well too. Like, there's a really good shot that they're going to get in there. So taking a page from the Kelcey playbook, I have those 2 at 5 and 5.5. Number 4, I'm looking at the AFC, the reigning AFC champion, the Cincinnati Bengals. You honestly, You have everything still there. Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, everybody's still on good contracts. You got better bringing in 3 offensive linemen, including La'el Collins. Still have your draft pick as well, too, which you could use to both. Like, you identified your weakness and you threw the kitchen sink at it. You're doing what you need to do right now as well, too. I think if they could bolster their roster, they could climb this even more. It's just really hard for a team that loses the Super Bowl to bounce back the next year. As we've seen, history has shown us, it's really hard to bounce back the next year and be as good as you were the year before. Some teams, after losing the Super Bowl, they're never quite the same. Seattle, they never are quite able to get that same luster back as well too. So I have them at number 4. Number 3, if everyone's able to play and everything stays the same, I think the Cleveland Browns are going to be the 3rd best team in the AFC. This is clearly dependent on Deshaun playing at least 13 of the 17 games. So if he doesn't play enough, all bets are off. I'm just going with what we have on paper because the 3rd rated running game in the NFL last year, 2 all-pro caliber guards, and a perennial Pro Bowl receiver when he's actually getting thrown the ball and not having to call his quarterback Black Kirk Cousins allegedly. A defense that is young with a lot of blossoming superstars as well. One of the better tight end rooms in the league after you cut a guy as well too. I think there's just a lot of weapons there. Stefanski will make it work as well too. Say everything you want about the roster for roster, person for person. I think the Browns, I'd put them at 3 in the power rankings right now. And the thing is, they're not going to get a whole lot better, I don't think, because they do have some salary cap space to bring some guys in, but they don't got no draft picks. So this is subject to change following the draft, which definitely look forward to draft season as well too. We're getting real close to that. Number 2, I'm going with the Buffalo Bills. The only reason they're not honestly higher is because, well, the team that ahead of them did a little bit more, but I love bringing in Von Miller. I don't like how much you paid him for how long. It's a little bit reckless in my opinion, as great as he is. I think their defense is a whole lot better. Tre'Davious White, we want to see him get healthy from that knee injury as well too. Offensively, honestly, they're still the same. Cutting Cole Beasley does nothing for me really, but the only reason they're not number 1 is because Brian Dabble and squad ended up leaving to take the job. And so I think that set them back just the small amount for the Los Angeles Chargers right now to be taking over the power rankings at the top. You were on the verge of a playoff team last year as well, despite Brandon Staley treating Justin Herbert like this is Madden, going for it on 4th down and 19 half the time. You brought in J.C. Jackson, who you and I agree is a top 3 corner in the game. Arguably, you can make a case for number 1. You can make a really strong case for it.
Him and Jalen do a back and forth in my eyes, but yeah.
And then Xavier Howard, I toss in there, and Yair Alexander as well too. But all of them are in there as well. Khalil Mack, not quite the same Khalil Mack as when he was traded the first time, but he's still got some steam next to him. You're putting him opposite Joey Bosa as well. You have all your draft picks. You can literally take the best available player. What did they pick? 13, 17, somewhere in that area. Yeah. You're going to get a darn good player there. Derwin James has a year back of being healthy. Offensive line, Rashawn Slater going to year 2. Herbert, you brought back Mike Williams, which I think was a huge thing as well. This team's absolutely as talented as it gets, which is what power rankings are. We're going off of talent, basically. You have a second year with Brandon Staley and squad as head coach. So I'm looking forward to the Chargers there. Right now, my number 1 in the power ranking. And honestly, your boy Jordan Davis slips them in the draft. They can grab him, and they might stay in this number 1 spot, regardless of what other teams do as well. Their biggest weakness last year was stopping the run and a little bit of offensive inconsistency. Well, defensively, good luck, everybody else. Their defense, I think, can help win them games now, which they could not do last year. Last year, their defense was around, but the offense had to win the game. Now I think your defense can win you some games. Not in the AFC West. That is going to be shootouts across the board. But in other situations, that defense can win you some games now.
Yeah, it's very funny. I'm pretty sure our top 7 are the same. I'm sure your top 7 includes the Patriots as well.
I do not have the Patriots up there. They took a step back.
Okay,
losing J.C. Jackson, as great as it is for the Chargers, they dropped them out of my top 10 even in the AFC.
Okay, so we have one different in the top 7, but we have a completely different order. And I find unique where my 6 and 7 falling out of the top 5, I'm going to give an honorable mention. 6 is the Chiefs, 7 is the Browns. And again, the big reason as much as I want to be like, yeah, it's all based off of what's on paper. I don't know if Deshaun Watson's going to be on paper for the whole season. So I don't want to give him that credit yet. And I still think there's moves there that they need to make. And I think the Chiefs defensively still need to make more moves defensively to improve. But their offense, obviously, I feel comfortable with.
I'll also mention, too, at number 7, I have the Ravens because of some of the moves they made defensively as well, too. I like some of the moves they made, and I think Lamar's going to get healthy as well as the rest of the team. So there's my 7, just so we're on the same.
Yeah, Ravens are close to making it there. But I just mentioned those 2 because those 2 are in your list. Mm-hmm. And they're just outside of my list because of there's a couple moves I want them to make first, and then obviously the Ravens, honestly, their draft can change everything. Like them in the draft, they could easily jump into the top 5. But so starting at number 5 for me, I'm going to go those New England Patriots I just mentioned. I think offensively this team is still very good. Mac Jones is a very consistent offensive player. that has proven his floor is very high. You're going to keep getting that floor being very high year after year after year. He's not going to go make the exceptional plays, but he's proven he can win you a game by only throwing 3 passes. He's that smart of a player. He doesn't have to do much. He knows that, and he knows that about himself. And I think if you're a quarterback leading a franchise at any point in time in that franchise's career, but especially coming after Tom Brady, and you already know what you're capable of, I feel like you can be very successful for that team going forward because they know based off their time with Tom Brady, all they have to do is put the pieces into place, and the quarterback's not going to screw it up. And if you can be Mac Jones and not screw it up, you're going to be successful. So I think that's what the whole plan for the Patriots are. Obviously, J.C. Jackson, I would have had them higher if he was there, but them losing actually dropped. I had him at 3, and then them losing J.C. Jackson dropped him down to 5 here. Honestly, I probably could have dropped him more, but 5 feels a very comfortable place because of all the other weird moves we just saw. Number 4, though, is that Indianapolis Colts team you just mentioned. I think Matt Ryan kind of solidifies them in the top 5 because we talked about it with Jacoby Brissett about the Browns earlier. Keeping teams on schedule, that's all you have to do for the Colts. Again, this is still a job where all you have to do is exist in the 2 seconds between getting the snap and handing the ball to Jonathan Taylor and occasionally pulling it and throwing to Michael Pittman on a slant route or a stop route or throwing it to insert receiver they go and get in free agency or the draft here. Like, please.
That's perfect. The one thing I didn't mention with this, too, the great signing is this, is we get to see the return of Nyheim Hines because Matt Ryan is not scared to check it down on occasion, do a speed demon running back, Darren Sproles 2.0 on the flats that Carson Wentz refused to do. So I think that adds a little spice to their offense. And you mentioned it. They get a number 2 receiver or Paris Campbell plays all 17 games. They could jump up for me to 4 or 3 as well, too. But I agree with you. Like, Matt Ryan's the perfect fit for this team.
Bring Julio Jones onto the team and then draft a young kid. I don't care. Like, do something. Also get a corner on the backside as well. That in the draft, that's your main goal.
Yeah.
Number 3, though, is the team you picked at number 1, the Chargers. I think they're still just a little too young to be the best team yet. There's still quite because so many guys had a good year in their rookie year last year. I always worry about that sophomore slump. You know, that sophomore or it's not even a slump. It's just a stagnation for a year. Like, you know, they don't do much or anything like that. So I worry about that. Obviously, that's the moves they made, though. I honestly, I don't know if there's a better team that's not ahead of them that made better moves. Like, I mean, truthfully, I look at this. The Chargers made the best moves for what they needed, not name the Bengals. Which brings me to number 2, the Bengals, the team that was in the Super Bowl last year. The Bengals, and you talked about it. They know their weakness. You just watched Joe Burrow get absolutely demolished through this playoff run and still lead you to a Super Bowl where you have a chance to win a Super Bowl. Get them an offensive line. They did so. They're continuing to do so. They're going to go to the draft now, and they're going to pick all defensive players. And they're going to bolster their corners. They're going to bolster their defensive line. They're going to do everything they need to do to build this team, which is something that we've talked about with this Bengals team. If they could just, from the front office standpoint, have patience and not try to progress this thing too fast. And they have done that. They made the Super Bowl, and instead of going out and getting the highest paid in their position, they went out and got the most amount of quality players they could for each position in case of injury. It's like, oh, yeah, we'll get 3 tackles here. We'll get 3 guards. We're going to cut this guard, though, because, well, he's a former Steeler, so we don't need him anymore. And, yeah, we're good. Oh, we're going to get that backup center, too, just because he's chilling there. Like, we're going to go with Lyle Collins because we need a bodyguard for Joe Burrow. So, like, let's do that. So I love the Bengals, what they did. Number 1, though, I don't know why I'm still riding with this team. They disappointed me last year, mostly down to injury. But you get Tre'Davious White back this year, and the Buffalo Bills are number 1. You obviously signed Von Miller to a ridiculous contract. But I'm sorry, I don't know who had a better offseason without losing anything, really. I mean, the Bills, their losses are minute compared to what they gained, in my eyes. They've gained a lot and lost, like, you can't even see it on screen. Like,
players, I don't think they lost much. I mean, cutting Cole Beasley does nothing. But my only concern was that Dabble and the Dorsey loss as well, too. So I'm curious did Josh Allen, did he just progress on his own? Did they help make him? Was it a little blend of both? I'm curious to see how that works. Anytime a young quarterback loses, like the coach who he exploded with, I'm always curious about how they work through that as well, too. So I'm definitely curious to see that one. But a couple of teams neither one of us mentioned. The Denver Broncos with Mr. Unlimited Russell Wilson himself at quarterback. Neither one of us had him in the top 7 even. I had him at number 8, but you don't think that big trade puts them into that top 8 realm?
Dude, he barely made my top 10. And it was literally down to him, the Titans, and the Raiders getting into the top 10 spot there. And those, spoiler alert, those three are there at 10, 11, 12. So, but no, the Broncos at 10. No, I mean, look, you still have to figure out this Melvin Gordon situation. Is he going to be there long term? Is he going to even play this season? We don't know what's going to happen with him. You still need a couple more offensive linemen. You have two good ones. And Quinn Miners, who, by the way, thank you, everybody who listened to me about Quinn Miners. You're welcome. I've enlightened the world about the belly. Now, next to him, Dalton Risner being the other offensive lineman that you have.
Garrett
But then
Bowles,
you look at the weapons. Do what?
Garrett Bowles is pretty good at tackle.
Okay,
I mean,
Garrett Bowles is good on his day.
he had a lot of good days last year.
That's fair. He did have he did have a lot of good days last year. Unfortunately, with a team that does not have any weapons now because, oh, by the way, you sent them all to Seattle, and Noah Fant, and now you also lost Shelby Harris as well. So you have to replace both of those positions. You still have to fill in your linebacker roles. You still have a corner spot that's missing. You still have I don't know what's going to be your number one receiver here situation because obviously is it going to be Cortland Sutton? Is it going to be Jerry Jeudy? Can either stay healthy long enough? Are either one worth being a number one? Do you have to go out and get another number one? Like, there's so many questions I have about who's going to be the guy for Russell. Russell's always had that number one. He's always had a Tyler Lockett or in the last 2 years, DK Metcalf. The problem is when there's a number one and no number twos, or he just chooses not to throw the number twos. And that's going to be a bigger problem in this is now he has to choose where to throw the ball to with a bunch of guys he's never played with for his career. And Russell Wilson's not the most trusting quarterback we've seen. He might be number two as far as least trusting quarterback behind only Aaron Rodgers. So I'm just going to say, I think this is going to come down to the Broncos are going to shoot themselves in the foot with this Russell Wilson trade because they lost a lot to get Russell Wilson. But what are you going to replace him with? Because you lost everything you had the opportunity to replace the needs to help Russell Wilson.
I'm curious too, because you're going into a new coaching situation, Nathaniel Hackett as well too at the Reigns as well. So I think that's an upgrade over Vic Fangio because Vic Fangio is clearly checked out as the head coach there in Denver. He clearly hated Drew Lock as well too. It was pretty much well known even by players. He hated Drew Lock as well. So I'm curious to see if maybe the offense, the receiver weapons like Jerry Jeudy 1,000 yards, but he has 5 touchdowns in 2 seasons as well too for a guy that's highly touted, and that's a little concerning. Cortland Sutton, fantastic a couple of years ago, was hurt. Then last year was pretty good in spots. So I'm curious. Is Russell able to help take those guys to the next level as well, too? KJ Hamler, an absolute speed demon. Noah Fant. Russell doesn't throw to tight ends anyway, so I think you're okay with that one as well, too. I'm curious to see how the offense is built with Hackett, Russell Wilson's skill set, and these receivers, because they're all good, but they're not known as burners necessarily. They're not Tyler Lockett, DK Metcalf running 40-yard routes, things like that. So I'm curious how that works. You mentioned the Titans.
It's also worth mentioning, like Teddy Bridgewater with the Saints, with a very subpar receiving group with the Saints, exceeded very well. When he went to the Broncos with what should be a very good receiving core, it was not good. It's not a good situation. Sub 500.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a quarterback that is going to give you the same grade every day. He gives you a B every day. He's not going to give you an A. Not going to give you A plus. He's not going to give you a C minus. He gives you a B. And with a subpar receiving core in New Orleans, did well. With a should be good, did bad.
Definitely curious to see how they do. A couple teams we mentioned as well, too. We had the Titans both sit a little bit on the outside looking in as well, too. And for me, the reason the Titans have there is I just have a few questions. Are they already peaked basically with Ryan Tannehill? Because we saw the wheels kind of come undone last year. The injury and the durability, I think, is a little concerned. They had so many injuries last year. We're able to right the ship. Derrick Henry, as magnificent as he is, we finally saw a little chink in the armor with him getting hurt. Is that going to be consistent? Was this a one-off? I'm curious to see how that is moving forward. A.J. Brown's been a little inconsistent with injuries. You got Bobby Trees, Robert Woods coming in for a 6th-round pick. I'm curious if he can stay healthy and how that integrates in the offense. So I just have some questions, I guess, if that makes sense as well, too. Like last year felt like a wonderful wave, despite all of the injuries and everything like that, to get into the playoffs. But I think we saw where they're limited. So that's one that I'm curious about them. And then also another thing we didn't talk about that probably made one of the bigger moves of the offseason. Neither one of us had the Raiders up there after adding Devontae Adams, Chandler Jones as well, too, guys like that. Surprised neither one of us had them up there as well, too. Is yours just questions about the holes on the team, or are you just they unfortunately have to play in that division?
There's a whole lot of holes. There's 5 holes in particular that I'm worried about. There's the entire offensive line that's sitting in free agency right now. Their whole starting 5, well, okay, 4 out of the starting 5 are currently a free agent on the market. you have one guy from last year still on your team. And it's not Richie Incognito. It's not a name you'd recognize at all by any means. So it's like the right guard, and that's Alex Leatherwood. So you have a walking penalty still on your roster as your only offensive lineman. All right. Well, that works for you. I still worry about their defense, especially their corner situation. They re-signed Averett, which I still don't like. I think there's a whole lot they need to work on. The Titans, you mentioned them. I want to mention one thing about Derrick Henry. You mentioned the chink in the armor, and this is the one thing I always worry about with big running backs in their careers. You always see that one injury year, and then it's straight downhill. And I worry that workload finally got enough that it's just going to be he's never going to get fully healthy again now, and slowly just the I'm not going to say the wheels because this man is a tank, so I'm going to say the tracks will slowly come undone. You can only fix the tracks so many times on a tank before it becomes too tight to put on the wheels anymore.
Absolutely. And who knows, maybe he's absolutely fantastic next year, and this is a one-off. We'll have to wait and see on that. I'm definitely curious about
I hope
that
so. This jersey did not just, it's worth something here. Come on, Derek.
I also want to mention with the Raiders, the one thing you mentioned, if they can find a way to put a starting unit in front of Derek Carr that won't get him absolutely destroyed, that core might be arguably the best weapon, like core of receiving weapons in that division as well, too. As great as that division is now that Tyreek's gone, because Darren Waller's the second best tight end in the division, top 4 tight end in football. Hunter Renfro's a top 3 slot receiver in the game, arguably, depending on how you rank, who you put in that category. Devontae Adams is the best receiver who's not a slot receiver, arguably, depending how you rate that
can
category.
Play slot if you want him to.
Exactly. They're both fantastic. You have Josh Jacobs and Kenyon Drake at running back as well. So if they can figure out some way to just keep Derek Carr upright, that team could be really dangerous and they could climb up this list as well. Because I agree with you. They do have a pass rush, which is great on defense, but despite their secondary holes, I guess, outside of Trayvon Merrick, there are some interesting spots to keep an eye on, but they can get after the passer as well as just about anybody. So I'm curious to see if their strong suits can outweigh their weak spots, if that makes sense. Like if their guys can get open so fast, the offensive line doesn't have to matter. And if their pass rush can be so dangerous, their secondary could be a little lackadaisical, if you will. So I'm curious to see how they back that up as well, too. And my last
get a linebacker to go next to Divine Diablo, because Divine Diablo has a nice career ahead of him, but you need a linebacker next to him.
They need to fill in some spots, and they don't have any picks to do it with, so they're gonna have to find a way to adjust with what they can find. The last one I'm gonna mention too, there's a couple teams we didn't mention at all. The Dolphins and the Steelers. The Dolphins with that big time trade for Tyreek, I'd have them sitting at 12 still. I have too many questions. I'm curious about that offensive line. I'm curious about the offensive scheme. I'm still not 100% sure with Tua, and the defense, I'm not sure about either as well too. They brought in all those guys a couple years ago. Brian Flores looked like it's gonna be a great defense. They've kind of underperformed the last couple of years in spots. So what are your thoughts on the Dolphins?
Run it cover 2. You'll be successful. Do exactly what every game that the Dolphins have won, they come out in a cover 2 base. Noah Igbenogany is always on the roster in some way, shape, or form on their active day roster. And in the last 2 seasons, that is somehow an undeniable fact that is true. And I don't get it. It doesn't make sense to me. But when you come out in a cover 2 base, and Noah Igbenogany is on the active roster, either playing the special teams or as a corner that lines up in the slot, that team wins games defensively. Say what you will about it, but it's a fact. I don't worry about the defense as much. I do worry about the defensive line, though. That's a big worry for me, just because I feel like you need to add a little something extra to actually get to the quarterback. Not just to get close, no, to get to the quarterback and actually get sacks on the quarterback. I look for them to potentially try to do something with their 3rd round pick if they have it still. I don't even know which picks they have anymore. They're all gone. But their offensive line, getting Teron Armstead, it definitely helps out for sure. But you're exactly right about Tua. I have them at 9. I have them ahead of these other 3 teams we've talked about. And even the Steelers, I have them ahead of the Steelers. But Tua is a big question mark for me, where I'm like, can I get a little more than game manager Tua consistently? If I do, this team's going to be good. I've also been high on the Dolphins for, 4 seasons now, and they've just perennially let me down. So yeah, I don't know. Maybe I'm just an optimistic thinker here about the Dolphins, and then the Steelers, man, get an offensive line, and then I'll start worrying about what you can do, because right now they've done the opposite of the Bengals. The Bengals went and fixed their problem. The Steelers are like, it'll fix itself. We'll get a new quarterback and it'll fix itself. No, you still need an offensive line, Steelers. Go get one, please.
I will add with the Dolphins. I do love that they have Javon Hall and Jalen Phillips, guys coming into their second year as well too. So I'm curious how those last year's rookies come moving forward. So they do have plenty of weapons. I just need to see them all come together, especially under a brand new coaching staff and all the mess they've gone through in this offseason as well. And the Steelers, I have them at 13 as well because everything you mentioned, the offensive line still gaping. The receiving core, I'm curious about. Deontay Johnson was pretty nice. Chase Claypool has his moments, but meh. Tight end, you have a good tight end in Pat Freiermuth, a really good one. You have a fantastic young running back in Najee Harris. I'm really wondering what Mitch Trubisky's going to do in this offense. I'm really curious what the mindset here as well too. This is interesting to me. See what
that's if they don't move up for our quarterback. They've been still rumored to move up for Malik Willis at this point in time too.
And if they do that, then that makes it interesting as well. I think that Malik Willis should sit as much of this year as you can behind Trubisky. Just give him time, he has some work to do as well too as do all the quarterbacks in this draft. So I'm really curious.
Get an offensive line first.
Yeah, I'm curious what their long goal and what their short goal is here for the Steelers. Is it just TJ Watt, please save us, and Minkah Fitzpatrick save us? So there's a lot to look forward to, and that's just the offseason after about 13 days of NFL free agency and the new year beginning. We still have plenty of offseason, plenty of pro days, plenty of draft. There's a whole lot coming up. Look out for our big board coming out next month as well too, heading into the draft and our live draft special.
Actually, only a couple of weeks from now, actually.
Yeah, it's not too far away. About a month, like April 28th or so, something in that area. So when the draft begins. So we're not too far away from the draft and that big board. Keep an eye on as well too, because you know that there's going to be a little bit of sauce in there as well too. We're going to bring a little sauce and a little spice. There's going to be a lot to talk about there as well too. You can already tell with Kelcey's big old grin that looking forward to that.
Might be a saucy start to the big board. You never know.
Exactly as well too. So that'll do it for our AFC power rankings. And for those of you wondering, the reason we didn't do an FC power ranking is because it's only 3 teams really. Now heading into Kelcey's favorite part of the show, Crunch Time, presented by Swift Lifestyles. Clean energy gamer fuel like G Fuel as well too. Go and click the link in our description and use the code HiLowSports. Get yourself 15% off and help us get a chance to create our own flavor as well too. You definitely help us out with that one as well too. So Kelcey, Crunch Time, what's on your mind today?
So we got posed a question by our intern, the guy, Max here. Is the MLS, given all the MLB's issues with this lockout, given this opportunity, they both play in the spring, go into the fall, can the MLS finally supplant the MLB as that number 3 in the big 3 sports in the U.S.? Do you think they have that opportunity? And DC, I actually want to pose this question to you first, because I have a very unique take on this one. So I want to see what your answer is first.
Can I answer this with yes and no? Is this possible as well too? Because I think it's going to go like this. I think as an overall, from TV perspective, ratings, all that, maybe not quite yet. But from in-person viewing attendance and that sort of thing, the hype from those who get there, I think MLS can pass them this year as well too. Just because I think a lot more people are going to go to those games a little more frequently. I think the MLB is there's a sour taste with a lot of people. I don't think there's going to be the in-game attendance after the opening week or two in that situation when everyone's it's back, yay. It's going to kind of take that dip off as well, where MLS, I think, is climbing for in attendance, in-person attendance. So I look for it to be 6 in one and half a dozen the other, if that makes sense. We talked about it when we talked about Charlotte as well, too. What was it, 75,000 for an MLS game in Charlotte as well, too? And that team's pretty much brand spanking new at this point. And I think MLS is continuing to climb for those type of in-person events as well and stuff like that. So I look for MLS to maybe surpass them in person, but I think ratings, TVs, even internet trending wise, I think they still have a little ways to go, but they're not as far off as I think MLB is farther away from NBA and NFL than MLS is from MLB, if that makes sense.
You know, it's funny you say it that way because I'm actually going the opposite. I think the MLS has the opportunity to take over the TV market from the MLB, and the MLS, because here's the problem, is most of the stadiums in the MLS seat between 11 and 20,000. Most aren't fully open like an NFL stadium is for that opening game for Charlotte. And even during the Charlotte FC's regular home games, they're going to actually limit the attendance to about 40,000. So at most, you're going to get 40,000. The highest record in attendance so far is Atlanta, and who they broached 1 million. Unfortunately, the lowest in the MLB is around 740,000. So in-person attendance, it's still going to be the MLB because you want to take a break. You want to go hang out with your family. Let's go spend 4 hours at a ball game. Be American Pie, apple pie, Coke, and Chevrolet, as the old song goes. It's ingrained in people's minds to go and visit these stadiums. But I do think in shared cities, there's going to be an alternative to go to MLS games going forward. And I think it's going to continue to grow. That MLS is going to continue to be a byproduct of the social media universe because they do pose well on social media compared to the MLB. So I think TV, social media, MLS is going to surpass MLB. And it will start this year. MLB, though, still is going to have the in-person for now until stadiums get built bigger in the MLS.
I will say I do think MLS, because they have fewer games, I think they can maybe have better intent, like per game attendance, like per game, because their MLB has so damn many if you add them all up. So I'm really curious to see how that plays out as well too. So definitely something to keep an eye on as well. We might have ourselves a big 4 on the horizon as well too. Well, that's going to do it for us today. DJ joined as always by Kelcey for the High Low Sports Podcast. We appreciate you joining us this week. We will see you guys next week for a whole lot of sports fun and probably some food references as well.